Let's bring back Yamiche as we also bring in MSNBC political analyst and host of the Fast Politics podcast, Molly Jong-Fast, and staff writer for The Atlantic, Mark Leibovich. Always good to see you both here, all three of you, in fact. So, Yamiche, a headline in the New York Times today reads, South Korea negotiates release of its workers detained in the Georgia raid. You know, that doesn't really sound like something that happens between close allies. Any regrets from the White House for what happened in Georgia? Do they see it as one of the many unintended consequences of these sweeping raids? And could it damage tariff talks with, again, one of our closest allies?
Well, those are all key questions that I've been asking, Alex, but I haven't really gotten any clear answers, at least this weekend, when it comes to the White House. I was even trying to confirm whether or not this flight that South Korea says is going to be taking off sometime soon with about 300 South Korean nationals that were detained in this massive raid, whether that was definitely happening. The White House not confirming that either. That being said, the president spoke about this on Friday, saying that if people are here illegally, if they're working illegally, then they will, of course, need to be held accountable. So the White House and the president don't seem to be backing away from this. But as you said, South Korea is a key ally of the United States. We're in the middle right now, the U.S. and South Korea, of trade negotiations. And by the way, South Korea has pledged more than $500 billion with a B investments in the U.S. So in talking to experts, they say all of that could be at risk if it becomes a situation where the U.S. and South Korea can't really agree on anything here, Alex.
That's a lot of money, a lot of investment promised. Okay. So, Mark, as we've reported, a new large-scale ICE operation started there in Massachusetts this weekend. It's targeting, quote, the worst of the worst. Meanwhile, Trump posted, again, we've got to show this AI image. It was posted yesterday, threatening Chicago with the reimagined Department of War, effectively declaring war on a city in this country. Where's the widespread pushback? I mean, how did we get here?
I mean, this social media post is sort of an example of, even after everything that has gone on in social media and off social media and in the streets and so forth, Donald Trump is still capable of shocking people. I mean, you know, what can you say about this? I mean, I think the real answer is, I'm sure there is outrage on some level, but at a certain point, there is a numbness factor that sets in, and people just sort of have to react in a way in which they don't completely lose their minds every day, because there's plenty of fodder and plenty of material that people could focus on that could, you know, really be very distressing to people all day long. So, look, I mean, this is a big sort of shock and awe operation. What he's doing in Chicago, what he might do in Boston, what he's done in Washington. Yes, this could probably play out in the courts, but this takes a while. So he's getting these headlines. He's sort of making this statement, and the truth will sort of fall up, or the justice will sort of follow up on this. And ultimately, Donald Trump feels he's going to reap a political benefit that may or may not be true. But certainly it's troubling in the short term.
So let's add to this, Molly, that exchange on X by Vice President J.D. Vance, who called killing cartel members the highest and best use of our military, saying he doesn't give a S blank, what people call the U.S. strike on an alleged Venezuelan drug boat in the Caribbean. He said that after someone posted, hey, killing citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. Trump's response to Chicago, Vance's response here, they do have an air of hostility. Can you explain that? And what do you think of Mark's assessment that we're all just kind of becoming numb to this unprecedented tenor that we get from our highest leaders in the land? It never happened before the Trump era.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that certainly to survive, you know, we have to be thoughtful about the things that get us upset. But, you know, there were marches yesterday in the District of Columbia. There are huge marches in Chicago. People are, I think, reading this for what it is. The thing I would caution is Trump is not going into these blue cities and blue states because he wants to fight crime, or because his administration, by the way, the administration doesn't have the same message that he does, right? Or they want to fight illegal immigration. Both, you know you're in trouble when they can't even agree on the same story. But either way, that's not what this is about, right? This is about these sort of moves towards authoritarianism. And I think it's really important, because when you look at what Trump world is doing with the universities, it's the same thing. It's not about anti-Semitism. They're not trying to stop anti-Semitism. They're trying to control thought. They're trying to control money. They're trying to control admissions. They're trying to, put in a sort of authoritarian playbook. So I think it's really important that we just call a spade here. And I do think, this is not a coincidence. He's going into Chicago. He's targeting Pritzker. He sees that Pritzker is a very strong governor. He sees that this is Obama's city, But I think the one thing that sort of makes me feel better about this is it clearly is illegal. We saw it was illegal in Los Angeles. And, he's going to try this in Chicago. District of Columbia obviously is different because it doesn't have the same kind of federalist system protecting it. But I do think it's important when we see what's happening here to be really clear-eyed and to know what it is and that these are authoritarian leanings. And he would even say it. And that this is not about crime or immigration or any other number of things.
Yeah, I'm glad for that assessment there. Quickly, Yamiche, to you, because I know you've got to get back to the White House and do more reporting. There's another New York Times headline. Trump tramples Congress's power with little challenge from the GOP. Are Republicans outside the White House at least a little concerned about the administration's tones and actions? Do you think challenges will ever come?
It's a good question. As of right now, what we see is Republicans who are very willing to do what they need to do to be on the same page as the president. There are a lot of people up for re-election, so they are very worried about Trump supporters and people in their districts not re-electing them if they're seen as at all being at odds with President Trump. That being said, there is one place that you are seeing a little bit of change here and a little bit of breaking from the administration. One on vaccines. We had that hearing where we saw at least 2 Republican senators grilling the health secretary, talking about the fact that they don't believe people are able to get the vaccines that they need. We also see a bipartisan effort to release Epstein files, that being, of course, Jeffrey Epstein, the notorious sex trafficker. There are a lot of people who are also pushing for more transparency there. So we're seeing Republicans on the Hill also be focused on that. So those are at least 2 areas where there's a little bit of daylight.
Okay. Yamiche, you can take off. Thank you very much. Put my question next to you. I'll see you next hour. Mark, we've seen some protests popping up all over the country. While there are no real a sense of nationwide movements overall, this new NBC poll shows 52% of respondents are either dissatisfied or angry or furious with the Trump presidency. Do you think it's just a matter of time? Or do you think most people, and again, back to what we were talking about with your first response, are just kind of accepting this as the norm in the Trump era?
Well, I mean, I think a few things are true. I mean, those numbers are not good for Trump, but they're also kind of in the ballpark of where he's been both from the start of this administration and the last one. I mean, once, the low 40s, and which is where he is in today's polls, is usually, I guess even slightly a high end of where he often finds himself. So, I mean, I guess if it goes under 40, that's a bit of a danger zone for him. I mean, I do think that over time there will be a build of protest, and the resistance will eventually find some kind of cohesive movement and voice. I mean, I think, another dirty little secret here, though, is people are scared. I mean, I think this is what happens when you have a, authoritarian or sort of adjacent authoritarian response here. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do at protests at this point. I mean, there is a lot of unknown out there, and this is not an administration that seems to be operating with any checks and balances whatsoever. I think that begins with the Republican Party, which is in lockstep with him. And look, so there's more uncertainty. This is not as simple as just sort of going out and holding a sign. I mean, I think there is a level of great anxiety in the streets about what could happen in this country, and I think that's sort of a reality at this point, and pretty sad.
You agree, Molly? Do you think there's going to be any kind of national resistance buildup?
I think there will be. And I also think that, yes, billionaires have been deeply cowardly and Republican politicians have been deeply cowardly. And it's disappointing, but we put our faith in the wrong people, right? I think that there are people on the street, I saw these huge protests. They're not as cowardly as people in power are. So I think that, it is certainly very disappointing to watch some of these tech billionaires and some of these universities cave to Trump. But remember, they are operating, for shareholders and rich people, and they have decided that that's a calculus they want to make. But you know, like I had this grandfather who refused to name names during McCarthy. I brought this up last time I was on too, but he wasn't so brave. It was just that he knew the right thing to do. And in some ways, you know, we have, even though obviously this is very scary, we have a lot more power now. You know, every single person has a cell phone. And one of the things Pritzker said about this was, he said, don't, you know, be peaceful and document everything. Right. That's what he said. Document everything. You don't need to worry about whether CBS is going to show this, because people have cell phones. And so I do think it really is important to realize that Americans are more powerful than they've ever been.